Hello, friends from around the world. I'm Felipe Hoffa, Snowflake developer advocate, and we are totally live right now. Thanks for joining the show. Today with us, we have Xin Huang. Xin, did I say your name correctly?
Yep, you got it right, Felipe.
Yes, and you are a product manager for Snowflake.
That's correct. I'm the product manager for data ingestion at Snowflake, so I cover multiple areas such as copy, Snowpipe Streaming, and our Kafka connector.
I love Snowpipe, I love Snowpipe Streaming, and I love ingesting data. So what are we going to go into today? What topics do you have for us?
Yeah, today we're going to do a little sneak peek. We have a great session at Summit. I'm going to talk a little bit about our data ingestion options, some best practices. I've talked about this in blog posts before. We've discussed this in person as well, but this is going to be a little sneak peek, a 30-minute preview of the different ingestion options, some best practices, and what are the benefits of data ingestion, as well as showcasing some of our partners that have integrated with Snowpipe Streaming.
Cool. So, and we're not only optimizing how fast we load things, but we're also optimizing costs. That's another important part for people.
That's correct. In the ingestion space, we love to focus on speed. Speed and cost. We want to make ingestion as fast as possible for our customers and as affordable as possible. And a lot of times we do things behind the scenes, but there's also some best practices that our customers can do to make it a little bit easier. We try to help as much as we can, and we want to showcase these best practices on the customer side and take this feedback and figure out how can we improve it further on the Snowflake side magically, so there's nothing that customers have to do.
Excellent. And I have already some live messages. I want to remind everyone that we're live. We like taking risks, so please send us your messages. Send us your questions as we start developing these topics. Hola, Fernando. Fernando wants to say hi. Alexandra Van Vegan is happy to join and gain best practices from Xin, product manager at Snowflake. Let me share some resources with people that we have ready for them. This ebook, the modern data streaming pipeline with top streaming reference architectures. You can go here to our landing page. We are going to share that link, and people can get this ebook. But we have more. Summit is coming in June. I wanted to highlight these 3 sessions. Deconstructing Snowpipe Streaming's SDK to understand its design principles. We're going to talk a little bit about the SDK today. Achieving over 90% latency improvement with Snowpipe Streaming and Streamlit for property management. Super cool with AppFolio, and latency is important. We're going to discuss that today too. And look at this session coming in June. That ingestion with Snowflake, learn best practices and what's new, with the speakers Jacob Pulchalski, that has been a guest of the show, and Xin Huang. So hopefully you have some tips for us today, a preview of what this session is going to be.
Yeah, for sure. We have some preview tips here, and we're still working on the slides, but it's going to be a great session, and I'm super excited. So everyone gets a first look before Summit for free.
Yes, and then people, we will use the questions that you have today. You can use those questions to make the session even better.
Exactly.
And hopefully everyone at Summit will go to see your session to see even more of what's new on this. There are also blog posts like this one from June 2022, best practices for data ingestion with Snowflake, part 1, part 2 in October, part 3 from April 19, 2023. I guess it's time for a new blog post, Xin?
Yes, I am working on a new blog post just in time for Summit. There's a lot of content to cover. I want to have like everything ingestion, showcase the speed of ingestion, the new capabilities. So there's a lot of content to cover, and if there's anything that people want to see, do let me know, and I'll make sure to cover it in my blog post or in my Summit content session.
Excellent. I'll be looking forward. And we also have quick starts. We love quick starts, Snowpipe Streaming quick starts, so people can get their hands into Snowpipe Streaming. I also want to highlight, I love looking at this page with performance improvements. And one that's especially interesting for you that you've been working on is improved performance for loading JSON files.
That's correct. Yeah, this one was a great launch. We did this back in March of 2024. Without customers having to do anything, we automatically improve ingestion performance of JSON by up to 25%. So their queries overnight have improved the performance. So yesterday, it was 25% slower. Today, it's 25% faster. Nothing changed, just behind the scenes. We made sure this affects the right query results and um, affects speed and cost. So we love to
Yeah.
making these changes behind the scenes, and we have a lot more in store for RK, which is coming up soon, and all file formats with parallel scanning.
Parallel scanning. So thank you for that, Snowflake magic. And also, before we go to your slides today, I want to, since we're talking about streaming, we had here the demo there show, StreamCap showed us how to stream from Postgres to Snowflake really easily. So that was a great connector. There are more, we have more partners that do something like that, but I love highlighting the shows, the videos that we made here. And we recently had James Sun showing off how to stream from. You tell me how this works. What did James Sun?
Yeah, James Sun showed how Amazon Data Firehose integrated with Snowpipe Streaming and achieved IoT data streaming from Kinesis to Snowflake in the order of seconds. Firehose is a no-code solution, so they were able to get data from Kinesis streams directly into Snowflake in the matter of seconds, and it's a really great integration. We love working with all of our partners, including Amazon and others, and I'll showcase some of those integrations in my slides a little bit later.
Beautiful. And I have some questions that we might save for the end, but let me know if you want to answer any of these right now. Siva wants to know if cluster key will save cost. Jivan wants to know if they can use OAuth with streaming SDK in the future. Osman is happy to be here. Milan wants to see real-time streaming data ingestion. Milan, you can see it on those videos. And Xin, you can discuss what does real-time mean.
Mm-hmm.
And Rafael, I'm sad that his talk was not approved, but he has a talk on best practices ingesting semi-structured data into Snowflake. I would love to read that post if you have it, Rafael.
Yeah, for sure, Rafael. If you have that, we can definitely write a blog post together. If you have some best practice, I'd love to work with our customers to write joint blog posts as well. Yeah.
Excellent, Rafael. We will take your offer. He's super happy. And yes, Milan is asking the perennial question: can we get access to slides and this presentation recording? This presentation is live right now, but as soon as we finish it, the recording is ready for everyone to watch on YouTube or LinkedIn. Send it to your friends. So that is really cool. So any of the questions that I read that you want to attack right now, or do we go into your slides?
I think we'll go into the slides first, and then I'll talk about the clustering and the OAuth capabilities when we get to Snowpipe Streaming. Those are great questions, and I'd love to cover them.
Excellent. So let's go straight into the topic. Xin, the screen is yours.
Awesome. So going into our ingestion options, I mentioned that I'm the PM for ingestion at Snowflake. There's three main ingestion options that we support. Copy is our oldest ingestion method, but it's super efficient. You control your own warehouse. You have bulk loading of your files. So the latency is deterministic. Whenever you run a copy query, you point it against the stage and the files will load. So you can run this every few minutes, every few hours, or every day. This is typical of a batch loading process. And then we have over to the continuous loading process of Snowpipe and Snowpipe Streaming. Snowpipe is essentially automated copy. It listens to cloud notifications from your object storage. So S3, Azure Blob Storage, or Google Cloud Storage. As files land in those storage locations, notifications get sent to Snowpipe. Snowpipe picks it up. It's completely serverless. There's nothing for you to manage after you've set it up. And there's a medium latency of about 30 seconds from when the notification lands on Snowpipe and when the file is being loaded to the table. Snowpipe Streaming is slightly different than Snowpipe. It's a different flavor where instead of having files, we're loading rows continuously. So your application is creating row set data, and you can send that through a Java SDK or using our Kafka connector or other clients and send that directly to a Snowflake table. There's nothing for you to configure in terms of first landing those rows into a file. You're landing these rows directly from your source into your destination of Snowflake. And the median latency is about 5 seconds end to end, but it's as low as 1 second. And we can cover that a little bit later. But these are the
We
three
have
main ingestion
options.
options that Snowflake offers. And these are the things that customers use to first land their data into Snowflake. And these are what our partners build upon. They use these main core ingestion options that we offer.
Excellent.
Cool. So we'll go into copy first. So what's really great about copy is it's been existing since Snowflake was a company. So it's well tested, battle tested. Practically every single Snowflake customer uses copy. So the best practices here I've covered in some of our blog posts and some other summit sessions, but really use object path partitioning. When you think about S3 or Azure Storage, which I was a previous PM on, people just store their data into these data lakes, and they might not think about folders or partitioning. And if you try to list against a data lake with millions of files, it'll be slow because there will be latency of sending those requests from the server. However, if you partition your data and you know exactly, I want to load data from just April 16th, and you say copy data from just April 16th, we'll go directly to that partition and list those files and load those files. So really trim down the path that you want to load and not have inefficient listing of files. You can also specify the exact files that you want when you're loading ad hoc. And one other feature that we've implemented a few years ago is schema detection and schema evolution. Is when you have a file, you don't have the table yet, you might not be the owner of the file. These files just might be coming from different applications, your customers or your partners, and you have to first detect what the schema is, create that table on Snowflake. Schema detection automatically looks at the file, creates the table for you with the appropriate naming and data types. And then as your data schema changes, it will evolve that table by adding new columns automatically. So also take advantage of the built-in file format options and copy options we have, such as on error and data handling. So this is where copy really excels, is because we've had such long expertise and this is such a long standing feature, we've made optimizations continuously over the years. The most recent one was that JSON improvement, where we found ways to optimize JSON loading. We found a lot of customers were loading lots of small JSON or lots of JSON files. So we focused on making JSON performance faster, and that's where we achieved that 25% latency improvement for most JSON loading scenarios. So overnight, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to change your copy commands, or you didn't have to change your Snowpipes. It was just automatic for you.
Nice. I love faster. And
Yeah.
these are all tips for copy when you are copying into instead of streaming. We're going to jump to streaming, but I love that you also have some don't advice.
Yes, on the don't advice is don't make it complicated. Data ingestion shouldn't be overly complex. It's not the core part of your business requirement. You want the data to be in Snowflake, and then you want to query on it and get business value. So don't make it more complex than it has to be. So don't overcomplicate your data loads by splitting your files or splitting into multiple copy jobs. If you select a extra small warehouse, we will parallelize it across 8 threads. If you select the extra large warehouse, we'll parallelize it across multiple threads on each individual file. So we can load thousands or millions of files on a warehouse automatically. So you don't have to worry about splitting, oh, I only can load a batch of 10 files here and another batch of 10 files here. Just send all the files that you want, and we will load it for you, regardless of size or data format. So really, there's a lot of options with copy, and it's an extremely powerful and cost-efficient tool.
Yeah. Now, if people have the choice of how to produce files for a Snowflake, we recommend them to do it smaller sizes, but that might get improved.
Yeah, we recommend sizes of around 100 megabytes to 250 megabytes, but it can be any size that you want, like tens of megabytes or gigabytes. We're improving our large file ingestion. We've seen that files are getting larger as more data is being created. So we want to improve our data loading of large gigabyte size files, and that will also happen automatically soon too in the future.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Let's go to the next slide. Snowpipe files and streaming. Excellent.
Yes, going into the next slide on Snowpipe, I mentioned before there's two flavors of Snowpipe, files and streaming. So with files, this has also been around for several years, over 5-6 years now, where you have files that are landing into your S3 bucket, your Azure Storage account, and events are sent. So this is a continuous data loading process. So you can think of it also as a streaming solution, because this is in real time. Once you set up the Snowpipe, as long as notifications are coming in, we will automatically ingest those files, millions of files per hour, terabytes per hour, and all with deduplication. So you don't have to worry about files being loaded again. And with Snowpipe Streaming, this is the new solution that we made GA last year. This is for direct ingestion of your rows from your apps and your services or your databases directly to a Snowflake table. So you're bypassing first storing that data into object storage. You're going directly from the source to your destination, which is your Snowflake table. And this is all done with a SDK. You say, insert these rows, and then we will automatically insert those rows with low latency and low cost. And of course, you can have configuration options as well, and I'll touch upon that a little bit later. But really, both of these options, both files and streaming, is a great solution for your near real-time data ingestion, and it really depends on the source of your data generation. Does your source generate files, or does your source generate rows directly? So you're just picking a solution based on what is the source of your data.
Nice. If you have files, bring files. If you have rows, Snowflake will happily ingest your rows.
Correct. And this is a chart that I love to show at all my sessions, because whenever I talk to customers in the field, they agree with me. They say that streaming does not mean instantaneous. Oftentimes, when we look at open source solutions or existing solutions that have been on the market for several years, they focus on the millisecond latencies, but oftentimes most customers don't have that millisecond latency requirements. They have a streaming requirement of getting things in faster. So previously they might be batch loading on a 24-hour basis. Now they want to go down to a 6-hour, then to minute basis. So it's not an overnight shift on streaming. So we really want to focus on streaming. Doesn't mean instantaneous. It means getting the data in as fast as possible, making it better than what it was before, but also making sure that we're deriving the value. You don't want to spend all your time and effort trying to eke out milliseconds of latency when your downstream batch processing or your the people who are viewing your dashboards don't look at it until an hour later. You want to make sure that everything aligns such that your data ingestion is fast, but also your transformations align, and your dashboards and your reporting aligns with the value that it adds. So really, this is where the batch ingestion of copy, there's a lot of value to be had in the hours of latency. And then for Snowpipe, in the minutes latency, where you have files that are coming in continuously, you want it to be loaded in 30 seconds to a minute and processed. This is the value of Snowpipe, and then the value of Snowpipe streaming is on the order of seconds. So there's really a lot of value into each and every ingestion option, and it really depends on what your business requirements are.
Yeah, and this maps beautifully to dynamic tables where people can choose the latency. As rows are coming, the whole pipeline can update on depending on where you're choosing that your business needs are.
Correct. Yeah, Snowpipe streaming, dynamic tables are peas in a pod. I love working with our dynamic tables team. Ingestion makes it fast to choose the latency that you need to ingest your data in, and then dynamic tables makes it easy to transform that data and make it visible to your data applications or your reporting requirements.
Beautiful.
So going into Snowpipe, this is Snowpipe files. Oftentimes I've seen that people just send notifications for everything, every create, every delete. Some of the events, they don't even need to be processed, because if they set up their Snowpipe to only load JSON files, they were still sending some XML files. They don't want those XML files to be loaded. So one of the things that you can do on the Snowpipe side is to use the native cloud provider event filtering. This is something that you can set up when those events are created. Only send events for JSON files or only send events for a specific prefix or suffix. This makes it such that you save costs on your cloud provider side. It also makes Snowpipe much faster and efficient. It doesn't have to throw away those messages and not process them. It only processes the messages that you want to be loaded. And next is on the optimal file sizing. I touched upon that a little bit before, but this optimal file sizing is where Snowflake really excels on data loading, is 100 megabytes to 250 megabytes. That's what we found as the best cost of performance, because whenever you're spinning up a copy command or when Snowpipe is serverlessly loading, there's always going to be a little bit of spin up time or startup time, where if you have a lot of small files, it'll have to start up and spin down every time. But with 100 to 250 megabytes, we're able to load a good batch of files and ensure the optimal costs. For Azure and GCP pipes, you control your own queues. So you're able to leverage queues as sort of a metadata for Snowpipes. So you can send as much data as you want to those queues. And then Snowpipe will automatically filter the messages and know which tables to send it to. So you don't have to worry about configuring 10 or 50 notification integrations. Just use the same notification integrations for hundreds of pipes. We will automatically figure it out for you. And then also check your pipe health, use error notifications whenever there is a failure because something was broken in your data file. We will send a notification to your configured error notification spot of AWS SNS, Azure Event Grid, or Google PubSub. So this gives you real-time notifications of when something goes wrong.
Yes. And don't.
Yes, on the don't best practices is ingesting tiny files. If you're creating very small files, why are you even creating those files? You're just cluttering up your data lake. When you try to list your data lake, you're going to have millions of small files. That's going to affect your performance. That's going to affect your costs and your usability of your data lake. So if you don't need to create those small files, can you use Snowpipe Streaming just to bypass those files and send that data directly into Snowflake? This is really, if you can control the data generation source, it really makes sense to use Snowpipe Streaming to bypass storing those files in S3 or storing those files in object storage. Just go directly from source to destination table. And then one other thing I've seen customers do is building their own Frankenstein auto ingest solutions or custom replication options. Snowpipe has been around for several years. We've really optimized it. We're making improvements behind the scenes every day. And if you have other suggestions or feature requests, feel free to bring them to me. You don't have to go and build your own Lambda solution or your own a cron job to do ingestion of files. Snowpipe is extremely efficient. We're always making improvements behind the scenes. So it really makes sense to use the native solution instead of building something that you have to go and maintain and improve upon as things go wrong. And also, don't ignore the copy best practices. Everything I said about copy also applies to Snowpipe. Since Snowpipe is really serverless automated copy, you can leverage the same best practices from before.
Yes, and I have a question from Rafael, but I guess the answer comes in the next slide. But what do you do with many small CSV reports, 1 kilobyte, 10 megabytes? Instead of Snowpipe, what do you use?
Yeah, on the 10 megabytes for CSV, it's still a fairly good size. So Snowpipe is still a good option for those 10 megabyte reports. For the 1 kilobyte reports, Snowpipe is still a good option if you cannot control the creation of it. Ideally, we would like those reports to be batched a little bit higher, but since you can't control the data generation, you can use Snowpipe or you can use copy. Do you need those small CSV reports to be loaded every 30 seconds or every minute, or can those small CSV reports of 1 kilobyte be batched to be loaded every hour or every few hours? So it really depends on what is your desired latency, what's your business requirements? Do you need those reports to be continuously loaded in real time, or can they be loaded as a batch process? So we can discuss a little bit more, but Snowpipe is still a good option, but maybe copy would be a good option for those small CSV reports also.
Exactly, because we have these three options, which is copy, where you can bring all those files and once an hour ingest many 1 kilobyte files. You have Snowpipe, that's what we're looking at right now. And the next option is Snowpipe Streaming.
Yep, for Snowpipe Streaming, let's go to the next slide.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Excellent.
so Snowpipe Streaming, I love talking about Snowpipe Streaming because this is really the hot thing that is taking up most of my time. I have so many customer conversations about it. And ever since we made this GA at Summit last year, it's been growing like crazy. Snowpipe Streaming is, again, direct ingestion of your data directly from your source to your Snowflake table. There's no files for you to manage. There's no pipes for you to manage. All you have to do is integrate with the Java SDK in your application. So you have an IoT application, or you have a mobile application or web application. You're creating that data, and that data is being sent directly through Snowpipe Streaming into your destination Snowflake table. And we provide exactly once and per channel ordering. So you're able to get your data in exactly once and process it in order. So those are really the two main challenges of distributed systems, and Snowpipe Streaming offers it built in, so you don't have to worry about that. And of course, streaming is really meant for that low latency use case. So if you have latency requirements in the order of seconds, Snowpipe Streaming offers latency as low as 1 second, and you can always configure that. If you don't need your data to be ingested every 1 second, you want to buffer it, Snowpipe Streaming offers native buffering. So we will buffer the data and send it as every 5 seconds, we configure it to be 5 seconds. Some customers really like that because they want a start event and an end event, and they want it to be sent in the same transaction. So this will save on network costs, or if they have a poor network bandwidth, this really helps. And we've seen high throughput use cases as well as trickle use cases. It's really dependent on your business requirements and your data throughput. But we've seen anywhere from megabytes per second to gigabytes per second. We've seen customers ingesting over 2.5 gigabytes per second of data ingestion, which is a huge amount of data, and Snowpipe Streaming is able to support that effortlessly. And of course, all of this is done with low overhead. Snowpipe Streaming is super simple to use. You create the client, or you use one of our connectors, and it'll be low cost for both the flood and trickle cases. So one number I like to throw out is about 5 credits per terabyte of data ingestion. So that's for the normal use case. And of course, as your data volumes increase, the price doesn't increase that much. It's already very efficient. And we've built a lot of integrations with Kafka. So we have our native integration with our first party offering of the Snowflake connector for Kafka, where it's using Snowpipe Streaming. And we've seen customers achieve anywhere from 50 to 90% cost savings by using that Kafka Snowpipe Streaming connector, as well as latency improvements. Like AppFolio saw 90% latency improvement with Snowpipe Streaming. But we're also working with a huge amount of other partners like Streamcap, AWS Firehose for Kinesis data. We have applications and database connectors coming soon as well. And all this is talked about in our streaming ebook, where we have those reference architectures for different industries, but also showcasing our partners like Informatica, Firehose, Streamcap, Stream, a huge amount of partners that are integrating with Snowpipe Streaming for all sorts of data sources, including IoT, MQTT. So it's really a efficient way of streaming data at low cost and low latency.
Nice.
All right.
And the best practices for
Yes.
Snowpipe Streaming.
Yeah, and some best practices is really determine your business requirements. I keep saying this over and over again. Not everyone's requirements are the same. That's why we offer different ingestion options, and they're all efficient depending on how you want your data to be loaded and when you want your data to be loaded. So there's a setting in Snowpipe Streaming called max client lag, and by default, this is 1 second. So Snowpipe Streaming by default sends your data every 1 second as soon as it's available. However, some customers want to configure that. They want to say, I want Snowpipe Streaming to only send my data every 30 seconds or every 5 seconds. You can configure this anywhere from 1 second to 10 minutes. And it's really handles your business requirements. You want multiple events to be sent at once. So you can configure that to your desired input. Another thing is the Snowpipe streaming channels. So channels you can think of as different topics for your messages. Oftentimes you're generating data continuously. Data ebbs and flows, but you can create those channels and keep it open and reuse it. So you don't have to worry about closing the channel to flush the data. We automatically flush the data, so you don't have to close the channel. Just keep sending the data as soon as you get it, as often as you get it. And of course, Snowpipe Streaming is offered as the Java SDK for you to integrate with your applications or your databases, but we've also had pre-built connectors for Kafka and Kinesis and databases. So leverage those partner integrations, leverage those first-party tools, and make your life simple. You don't have to go and rebuild it when it's already been built. Our Kafka connector is open source, so you can take a look at how we built it and also look at examples if you want to build your own connectors for different services. And of course, with all data ingestion options at Snowflake, we have great error handling. So you can configure it if you want your errors to be, if you want your ingestion to be aborted when there's any errors encountered, or continue. So you can control if my data has a problem, how do you want Snowpipe streaming to react? And of course,
Nice.
on the don't do for best practices.
Before the don't, I have a question for you from Jivan that might be related. What is the best maximum number of channels that can be used for best performance? I tried 10 and 20 and noticed 10 was faster. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it really depends on the throughput of your application and how many workers that your client has. So if I take the Kafka example, we use both Kafka task and topic partitions to determine the number of channels. So I can link to our Kafka connector open source, and you can see how we configure channels. We look at the number of topic partitions and the number of Kafka task workers. So it really depends on your hardware requirements and your throughput requirements. It could be that 10 was faster because you did not have enough throughput to fully saturate the 20 channels, but it's really dependent on how you want to do it. Sometimes even one channel is sufficient for performance of multiple megabytes per second, but using different channels is really dependent on how your source data is configured.
Nice. And do you want to go to the don't, or should I ask a couple more questions now?
I think I'll finish the don't, and then we can
Perfect.
go through the rest of the questions, especially the one about clustering and
Yes.
OAuth.
Let's go to the don't and we'll come back to the questions.
Yeah, so the don't is, again, streaming is dependent on what is the source of your data. Do you have a native streaming data source like Kafka or Kinesis? It makes sense to use Snowpipe streaming and use our Kafka and Kinesis connectors. Or are you getting files? If you're getting files from your customers or your partners, it doesn't make sense to build a streaming application just to read that file and then go and stream it again. This is just extra complexity and operations. So use Snowpipe if you have files. Use Snowpipe streaming if you have rows. So you don't have to think about one or the other. You can use both. You can augment Snowpipe streaming where it is appropriate. Don't just think of it as a one-size-fits-all solution. Really use the best tool for the job. You don't want to use a hammer as a screwdriver. You want to use Snowpipe for files, Snowpipe streaming for rows.
All right, thank you. And dynamic tables will take all the data from either from Snowpipe, from copy, from Snowpipe streaming. So you can use the different ingestion methods, and then you have your whole pipeline behind it.
Yeah.
Cool. So let me go to some questions. We have a lot of them. Let me start with Snowpipe streaming, but then we can go back to the other methods. Or do you have any that you want to answer right now? Because I have a couple about streaming from Oracle, or Sakib wants to know how to read from CockroachDB change feed. It's a little similar to what we have done, but maybe you have specific thoughts about this.
Yeah, so Jakub would actually be the best person to answer this, but I can talk a little bit about the database connectors that we've built with Snowpipe Streaming. We have actually in private preview a MySQL and Postgres connector that is built with Snowpipe Streaming. So you're able to get data from those databases using the change feed by streaming CDC data directly into a Snowflake table. We also want to expand our support for more databases like Microsoft SQL or MongoDB or Oracle in the future. But we also work with our partners who have already built these integrations. So Strim is a great example of a partner who has built their solution using Snowpipe Streaming to get data from Oracle directly into Snowflake tables with Snowpipe Streaming. As for CockroachDB, I've not seen as many requests, but that's definitely something that we can take back to the team and figure out what is the best way to get data from there into Snowflake.
Yeah, and a partner might have already built that, a Stream or a StreamCap. Likewise, when Milan wants to know directly ingesting, I guess, from Azure SQL or SQL Server into Snowflake. Kafka, partners, what's your favorite?
Yeah, it really depends on if you have Kafka already. A lot of customers do use Kafka as a CDC tool to get data from their databases. But if you don't have Kafka, it might be a little bit complex. I know for Azure SQL and SQL Server, it does have an option to export data into blob storage, and then you can have Snowpipe pick that up. But we also have partners like Strim and StreamCap that do support data from SQL directly to Snowflake through Snowpipe Streaming. So there's a lot of different options to approach this. If you have Kafka, then great, use Kafka. If not, use one of our partners or use the built-in native solution from SQL Server, which exports files, and then Snowpipe can pick it up. But also, again, in the future, we do want to support a Microsoft SQL database connector.
Excellent. And this was an early question from Jivan about using OAuth with the streaming SDK in the future.
Yes, so this is a great question that I want to touch upon. We do support Snowflake OAuth with Snowpipe Streaming. So there's two options to authenticate with Snowpipe Streaming, either private key or Snowflake OAuth. We've also seen requests where customers want to use external OAuth. So they want to use Okta or Microsoft Active Directory. So that's something that we are working on. And we actually have some questions for you on how do you want that to be surfaced in terms of logging in. So Jivan, I will reach out to you and showcase our design doc. We have it ready to be published, but we really want customer feedback on how they authenticate.
Excellent. So Jivan, thank you for the question. You get a private preview of the design doc. What about Siva, wondering about if cluster keys save on costs?
Yeah, so cluster keys can definitely save on costs. If your data is already clustered, then there's less work for Snowflake to do on clustering it again. So really, I would say if you can cluster your data before ingestion, that makes a lot of sense. If it's already clustered on Snowpipe Streaming, if it's not, you can use auto clustering, Snowflake's auto clustering service to cluster data. And the benefit of auto clustering on Snowflake is it will automatically take the data and cluster it, but also on the Snowpipe Streaming side, it might bypass migration and compaction. So Snowpipe Streaming has two costs. One is on the per client cost. So every second that you're streaming data in, we charge a small 0.01 credits per hour for that, but also on the amount of data that you send in, we asynchronously migrate that. So we make sure that we compact it for better query performance, for better compression. If you are also using clustering, clustering will do that automatically. So you won't get charged for both clustering and migration. You'll only get charged for one or the other. So clustering can save costs if you're using auto clustering on the Snowflake side.
Nice. And Joe has another question here. What about handling errors during streaming data ingestion? How do you effectively manage retries without incurring excessive costs or data duplication?
Yeah, so I think this depends on if you're talking about Snowpipe or Snowpipe Streaming. For the Snowpipe side, you can specify a error handling method. So either skip the file or continue, depending on what you choose for Snowpipe files. If you say continue, we'll bypass the error in the row and continue loading. And then you can go and re-ingest that specific row by doing an insert or saying a copy into command. So Snowpipe Streaming is a little bit different. So Snowpipe Streaming, we also have on-error options of abort or continue or skip batch. So you would have to manage those retries yourself, or if you're using Kafka Connector handles those retries. There is no worry of data duplication on both Snowpipe files or Snowpipe Streaming. We offer exactly once ingestion of both files and rows.
Nice. Speaking of error handling, Karan wants to know, is it possible to create notification email alert on pipe failure using Snowflake only without Amazon SNS, using account usage view, send email task, etc. functionality?
Yes. So we love observability. The alerts team has built the ability to send emails as alerts. Snowpipe was one of the first to offer error notifications. We are moving to that new framework that the task team and the alerts team has built. So we will be able to support email alerts on pipe failures. But for now, it is only sending to AWS, SNS, Azure Event Grid, or Google PubSub. But in the future, we'll be able to support sending emails or sending directly to a web endpoint. So you can send it to a Slack message or a ServiceNow ticket. So there's a lot of great integrations. So I would take a look at the alerts offering that we have and the endpoints that we support. And for tasks and Snowpipes, we will also support that in the near future.
Thank you, Karan, for the incentive to implement this. And Angelique wants to know about when you're using Snowpipe, upper boundary for file sizes?
We have not seen an upper boundary for Snowpipe file sizes. We've seen data as large as 5 gigabytes or even higher. But again, we recommend the 100 to 250 megabyte as the optimal file size for Snowpipe. If you have a large multi-gigabyte file size, we do support that. It's really dependent on what is the file boundary for cloud providers. I know for Azure and S3, you can only do like a 5 gigabyte file in a single put blob. If you do a multi-transaction upload, you can support a multi-terabyte object, but those multi-terabyte objects, of course, will take a lot longer to ingest versus if you have several hundred multi-hundred megabyte objects.
Yes, I'm wondering how big of files is Angelique thinking of, and we could go specific, have some specific advice there. Last question. This is like a large question, so feel free to give me a short answer for it, and then we can go into closing remarks. But Joe wants to know, what are some common challenges faced when implementing Snowpipe streaming for real-time data ingestion? And how can these challenges impact the effectiveness of data analysis in a cloud data warehouse environment? Big topic, but what would be the quick answer?
Yeah, the quick answer is it really is a trade-off between what is your latency requirement for your end-to-end data analysis. You can always get data ingested as quickly as possible, but are you analyzing that data in real time, or are you analyzing that data on the order of minutes or seconds? So there's a trade-off between ingestion latency and querying the data for analysis. So that's where I would say use that max client lag option for Snowpipe streaming. If you don't need your data to be ingested every 1 second, and you want your data to be ingested every 5 seconds or 30 seconds, it will really help with your data analysis later on, because the way that Snowflake handles time travel and table version partitioning, we're able to create these larger partitions such that you're able to generate a query and compile that query much faster for your data analysis later on. So again, it's a trade-off between ingestion latency and query compilation time. Setting the max client lag can help you batch a large amount of rows. We will automatically handle the buffering, send that on the max client lag that you set, say 5 seconds or 30 seconds, and then that will really help with your data analysis later on.
Yes. And I have 2 last questions, but if you have time, but if not, give me a very short answer for them. But one, it's a very to the point question. Which cloud provider, when used with Snowpipe, gives better performance? But let me ask you the next question first, and then you can go into closing with a comment on that. And I love this question from Tripti because it's like the perfect summary of what we've discussed today, which is cost effective, Snowpipe more frequently or Snowpipe streaming?
Yep, I'll answer this question first. So again, it really depends on the source of your data. Do you have files? Then Snowpipe will automatically ingest those files. It doesn't make sense to have Snowpipe run more frequently on kilobyte size files if you can send those rows directly through Snowpipe Streaming. So Snowpipe Streaming is really cost effective for native streaming data sources. So mobile apps, IoT, MQTT, Kafka Kinesis. Snowpipe Streaming is the most cost effective for those applications. And if you look at my blog post, Best Practices with Data Ingestion Part 3, we can compare Snowpipe versus Snowpipe Streaming for the Kafka use case. And Snowpipe Streaming absolutely makes sense and is more cost effective for Kafka. It's anywhere from 50% to 90% faster, as well as more cost effective for streaming use cases. So for Snowpipe, again, it really makes sense for you're getting files. You don't control how you're getting the data. Your customers are giving you files, your partners are giving you files, your applications are giving you files from legacy sources. So Snowpipe is cost effective for file loading. Snowpipe Streaming is cost effective for real-time loading of rows.
Yes, Tripti wanted to add that they get data from Kafka and create files in S3 and then use pipes. Apparently, it would be much better to just stream it.
Yes, it would make sense to use Snowpipe Streaming. So the Kafka connector will be able to read the topics from Kafka and stream it directly to your Snowflake table. So it will bypass the files in S3 and streaming would be cost effective. So I would say really look at the Best Practices Part 3 blog, and we would love to talk more and have people to help you on moving from Snowpipe to Snowpipe Streaming for your Kafka workload.
Tripti is happy about it. So let's close it now. I think it's time to close.
I'll close it with the quick answer to that question about which cloud provider, when used with Snowpipe, gives better performance. There is no real answer for that. Snowpipe really is cost effective and performant with any cloud provider. We support all the major providers, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. So we're always looking to improve. And of course, we support cross-cloud ingestion as well. So you don't have to worry about if your data is on S3, but your Snowflake account is on Azure. We support any direction. So you can go from AWS to Azure, Azure to Google Cloud, or any cloud provider and any source.
We love the clouds. We love multi-cloud.
Cost performant.
Excellent. Angelique, super happy. Great content. And you had a slide with a lot of links. Yes.
Yes, these are the links that you showed before. We have 3 sessions on Snowpipe Streaming and data ingestion. Those are the three main ones that you should register for and come give my team support. And of course, the ebook on streaming reference architectures and partners. We showcase, I believe, 18 reference architecture diagrams across multiple industries, from automotive to retail to security. So this is a great book to get started on if you're looking at adopting streaming architectures, as well as some of the partners that we showcase. We talked about Stream, Streamcap, Informatica, Firehose. So there's a lot of partners on there that have solutions and built integrations with Snowpipe Streaming to get data from your sources into Snowflake. And of course, the 3-part blog series that has been really popular, and I need to build a new blog upon. So if you have any other questions that you want for us to cover, I'm working on a new blog, so there'll be a new 2024 update for ingestion coming soon.
Thank you, Xin. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This was an awesome session. Abby is happy too. Great content indeed, very informative and useful. And Xin, I'll let you give the last 10 words, and then the bear will dance us off.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for attending my session. I hope this was a great teaser for Summit. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk to you. And the people who talked on chat about doing a joint blog post with me, happy to collaborate. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and love to come back on here soon.
I'm looking forward. Time to bring the bear. Thank you.